The Waifus of Ilia, Fire Emblem's winter hellscape. I genuinely think the last time I wrote a Christmas/any themed video to do with what time of year it was my Ford support science from years ago. People still don't know that it was a Ford support science though, so actually, it might be time to just update this thumbnail to just be Ford. Regardless, it's been snowing, and whenever I think of snow and Fire Emblem, Ilia comes to mind for two reasons. One, because of the ending winter, the disastrous weather phenomenon caused by the impact of legendary weapons clashing against dragons, and the second reason is Ilia, the country coated in snow year-round, making the living conditions there so bad that its inhabitants struggle to put food on the table since agriculture isn't really a thing. Instead, young women and girls don the Pegasus Rider short skirt and set out for mercenary jobs. It's a weird and shitty place to live, to be sure. This video doesn't actually focus on Ilia, the country itself, but its notable inhabitants, Florina, Fiora, and Farina. Growing up with Blazing Sword, the Pegasus sisters have always left an odd impression on me. As a teenage kid, Florina was next to unrelatable, and I could barely even really understand what her character was supposed to be besides being this shy and quiet girl for Sane to hit on. Then I never really used her because I thought she stunk as a combat unit and I just left her on the bench. Her ending with Hector always confused me. It was like, wait, why would Hector ever want to be with her? Honestly, I always found the Pegasus Sisters' ex-lords mostly weird additions, except for Farina and Hector, at least then. Fiora I felt a little better about, starting off with the fact that she was a much stronger unit, but her personality struck me as very boring. And Farina, while funny and had a recruitment that even as a kid I enjoyed, I still benched her. I've mentioned the ladies here and there in other videos. Florina and Lynn's support in the Lynn support science, a brief bit on Fiora and Eliwood in the Eliwood support science, and Farina in both the Hector support science and the Beowulf archetype video, but nothing really about them themselves. So let's start this mini analysis, which in hindsight is quite long, with the youngest of the three. Before this video actually begins though, I have an announcement to make. The channel got sponsored, and it's not a VPN or whatever. It's a product that I actually use, and believe it or not, you do as well, in a way. Chimera Clothing offers quality product and a good price, and it makes it a policy to vet their suppliers so as to ensure fair and ethical production of their goods. I decided to try to cut a promo myself just to show how they would look in real life. And if you order online but you aren't satisfied, they offer a full refund within 30 days of receipt. The company is open to feedback and to answer general questions about their products, so if you have any queries, feel free to ask on their website before ordering. Use code Faerghast for 10% off upon your order. Florina. Florina is first met in Lynn mode upon Sane trying to romance her until Kent reins him in. Florina is depicted as incredibly bashful, and it's later seen that she is afraid of men. And in her supports, it's further revealed that this fear can sometimes be debilitating on the field. In Lynn mode, that's essentially the most we get out of her. She's very close to Lynn, and she's scared of men. In the main campaign, she is famously remembered for her comedic introduction with Hector, where she flies across an archer-populated forest in order to contact Eliwood and co about Lynn's situation, where she and her Pegasus, Huey, literally crash land on Hector himself. Once the dust settles in the situation, the doors open to her support conversations. While yes, the lasting impression on Florina to most people, and this includes me, is that she is a pretty boring and quiet girl with a fear of men who isn't a very remarkable unit, what was a nice surprise to learn was that her supports with her sisters do unveil parts of her character that you wouldn't expect to see. The most obvious example is with Farina. In the B support, Farina asks her if she's gotten over her fear of men, noting that she cried herself to sleep every night. She responds by saying that she doesn't cry like that anymore, but the middle sister responds with a condescending question. Who was it that made you cry after every practice? It's admittedly a bizarrely mean-spirited question, but the follow-up question reveals another side of Florina altogether. Has anyone here ever seen you at a festival? I swear, you are a completely different person once you start coming out of your shell. And I bet Lynn doesn't know anything about all of that, does she? I know all kinds of juicy secrets I could tell her. Ah, listen to this. You'll never believe what Florina did. Florina's secret turned out to be that she gets very, shall we say, fancy-free at certain festivals. Although Farina herself didn't unveil the juiciest secrets to Lyn, she does bring up the funniest part of this side to her in private. It's not as bad as you make it out to be. Not as bad as when you started singing the Pegasus counting song all the way to 100 at that one festival back when... No, stop, it's so embarrassing. I mean, it's not like I included the part where you got up on that table full of food, sat yourself down cross-legged, and started belting out that song with a crooked grin on your face, right? I can't help but wonder if Florina's state at festivals is really what I think it is. Because the impression I'm getting is that she got boozed up and started singing Kumbaya. I was a drunk teenager too, and there was a lot more stuff to do in my small town than there was in Ilia. If Florina knows how to party, I respect that. But these pranks and mean-spirited remarks on Farina's end are discovered to be self-serving reality checks for her specifically. Farina is actually wondering if the meager, shy, and crybaby cadet is hidden in her still, as her actual progression as a warrior is something that the middle sister cannot understate. She praises how far Florina has come, a fully fledged Pegasus Knight, powerful like the rest of them and completely different from back in the training days. Believe it or not, but Florina, especially if you stuck with her in your playthrough, has become a very reliable and powerful warrior in the eyes of her sisters. Fiora, the eldest of the three, also remarks the stark contrast before and after they reunite. While Fiora also harkens back to her weakness around men, she does so in a much more caring way. Hey Florina, when this is all over, we should go back to Ilia together once you and I... Huh? But I'm still only... Having seen you fly, I'm sure they would promote you to Pegasus Knight first rank if we went back to Ilia, and I really want you to join me on the 1st Division. Then, I'll be able to help you anytime you need it. I would feel much better that way. Upon this suggestion by the eldest sister, Florina displays the most meaningful personal growth that doesn't have anything to do with her fear of men, which admittedly has significantly improved. Florina's personal journey here and after the war ends is to continue her path of self-confidence, strength, and independence. That wouldn't be good for me. You're so kind. You would probably protect me for the rest of my life. That's the problem. If I rely on you forever, I'll never become my own person. So, I've decided not to return to Ilia yet. It's because I do love you. You see, I don't want to always be the crybaby Florina who needs you to protect her. I want to be more like my sister, a fine Pegasus Knight. She doesn't want to fall back into her weak ways of the past, depending on her sisters for protection. This way is more dangerous, and in the skies, there might not be another flyer to help her out, but this was a decision that she came to on her own. It's a far cry from the weak girl back in Lyn mode. And even though she's mostly not getting over her fear of men altogether, there are several instances where she actively wants to improve this fear. She asks Ninian for help, which ends up being comedic as she admits that she's definitely not the right person to ask, which is true. It's Ninian. She adorably tries to build up the courage to talk to Hector to thank him for saving her back in Caelin. And when she can't do it, Huey, her horse, literally drags him over to her, whereupon she finally does it, before she starts to cry. Most hilariously though, is with Sarah. She seeks her advice on how to handle men, and Sarah starts going off about treating them with disgust and contempt. Then you just need to have more confidence. No matter who you're with, just think of yourself as being better than them. That'll do it. I can't think of them as equals? No, not at all. Think of them as lowly little bugs if you can. As bugs? Look, your shyness is pretty deeply ingrained, right? Then you'll just have to take drastic measures. Stand up straight, push out your chest, raise your chin, look me in the eye. No, I'm a bug, remember? Look at me with disgust. Besides this, there's a lot that can be said about her friendship with Lyn. But that support has always struck me as Florina being a foil for her. I talked about the support in a lot of detail in the Lyn support signs, so I recommend you watch that here. The voice acting is also pretty great, and with Nino, she's just being a good friend. Overall, Florina is a character that has a lot of growing up to do, both in her self-confidence and actual literal stats if you want to use her besides being a unit to ferry other people around. She has genuinely nice moments with Fiora and Lyn, and other more hilarious ones with Sarah and the ever-chaotic middle sister, Farina. That's enough of an analysis with her though. Farina is, genuinely, possibly the most chaotic character in this cast. She always came off a bit wacky in my playthroughs, having a Beowulf-style recruitment and whatnot. But oh my god, Farina is all over the place. Like, not in a bad way. I mean, sort of, depending on who you're asking. Depending on how you take what she dishes out in terms of personality, because, oh boy, she's got a purse full of it. Farina is first recruited deep into Hector mode while fighting some Black Fang guy named Pascal. She's a wandering mercenary who offers an incredibly high amount of 20,000 gold for her services. I've already talked about her support with Florina, where she pretty much bullies her kid sister and also brings up the fact that she was the one who made her cry after training. Now, while in the context of the conversation it was brought up to test how far Florina had come from her training days, it's also pretty indicative that she was definitely an asshole. Like, why are you getting your sister to cry all the time? Not to mention the complete mean move of gossiping about things that Florina finds embarrassing. Farina is an asshole, regardless of what her ulterior motive was there. Her self-worth comes from her profession and how much money she makes. She absolutely loves to flaunt what she has over others, and when it comes out, it's vain and literally nobody asked. I'm Farina. I'm a Pegasus Knight of Ilia. I'm Carla. Nice to meet you, Carla. So, I'll get right to the point. How much are they paying you? Just so you know, I'm getting 20,000 gold. I'm Dorcas. Elliewood hired me too. For how much? 2,000 in advance. Oh, I see, is that right? Well, 2,000 gold, that's quite a sum. By the way, my retainer is 20,000 gold pieces. 20,000 gold? Ha! I win. Well, see you later. My, that sure felt nice. There are also moments outside of money where her ignorance comes out too. So the tribes of Sakai, they all dance around a fire and chant Ooga Booga, don't they? They do? Don't they? You did say Sakai, didn't you? Carla, you really don't know much about the world, do you? She's just kind of a little shit, if you know what I mean. On the flip side, she also doesn't take very kindly to when people lay doubts about her or hurt her pride. You have the insistence about her asking price towards Hector, citing such dialogue exchanges as, Pegasi are noble animals, so they must eat noble carrots, and getting offended over Dart calling 20,000 gold chump change while scoffing over Farina's foolishness for willing to die for so little. Funnily enough, even she knows she's striking a ridiculously overpaid deal, as she accidentally admits to Hector that she is probably only worth 4,000 gold. So why is she so fixated on money? Well, hailing from Ilia, the land of constant snow, money is hard to come by. Vegetation struggles to grow, and it's common for weather to lay waste to harvests, meaning Ilians need to find other ways to make ends meet, and the most popular one is mercenary work. Farina grew up poor and has a negative opinion on the nobility, often critical of their cushy lives. She needs to make as much money as she can, and will deceive in order to get it, like the time she called out Dart's treasure map for being a fake, with the ulterior motive to actually get a look at it to find it for herself. It's not all bad though. Every character has redeeming moments, right? Well, not all the time, but Farina does show a more giving side. After finding out that Dorcas isn't being paid as much as her and getting more familiar with his wife's illness, she gives him advice on how to strike better deals with nobles. Later, she realizes that Dorcas isn't even close to securing the medicine for his wife, so she gives her a portion of her 20,000 she's already earned. It's a kind gesture, and Dorcas can now just afford the medicine, which, given that Dorcas's entire mission is to make enough money to buy it, is pretty huge. She has an interesting line in the A support though. Forget it, making money is important, but it does no one any good if you get killed in the process. Even though Farina is wacky and comical, when it comes to the realities of her job, she is more grounded. The mercenary training she has to do was ruthless. What she, Florina, and Fiora need to do at such a young age can lead to an early death, even in training. That anyone, even Florina, can make it out and become a knight should be more praiseworthy than we give it credit for. Why? Well, Farina almost died during training. You were like that before too, remember? When I was still a Pegasus Esquire, when my trainee squad was about to die in that practice maneuver, you left your own mission and swooped in to rescue us. And as a result, the Burn nobles charged you an outrageous termination fee for breach of contract. You still haven't finished paying off the loan you used to cover it yet, have you? Maybe it's just the reality of the job. Farina seems totally able to rationalize an alternate reality of her own sister not saving her is pretty depressing of what the reality of Ilia can be like. In any case, Farina opts to use her gold she's earned so far to pay off her sister's massive debt. It's not just her identity being tied to making money and being a mercenary. Being a woman in Ilia just sounds much better than being a man, all things considered. Pegasi only let females ride them, making them the actual breadwinners in the country. As she states, men are only good for cleaning stables and farming what can be farmed. She mentions a male cavalry platoon, but cites that they're not that good. She is among the proudest and most self-confident characters in the game. She will go to bat for others to earn a good wage when she feels compelled to, even if there's always an ulterior motive or self-insurance there, like bringing Carla along in the A support to form a mercenary duo where she makes 60% of the profits, or going back to Ilia to partner with Fiora and make 10% of the money Fiora has her manage. She is a totally wacky character though. Her interactions are just hilariously unhinged relative to the rest of the dialogue in the game, from questioning Sake's ooga booga dancing, accusing Hector of trying to seduce her and her sisters all at the same time, trying to flex her contract to her comrades out of vanity, and so on. She's just hilarious. Upon finishing this overview of her character, I definitely think she deserves to be seen more. Finally, the eldest sister, Fiora, who is a complete 180 from Farina, where Farina is chaos, Fiora is order. A lot of Fiora's meaningful characterization comes from her survivor's guilt. During an assignment from Pent to head to the Valor Isles, she lost her entire platoon due to an ambush, was the sole survivor, and would later find her sister on the isle, whereupon she joins her. As the eldest, she is much more mature and responsible than her sisters. She tries to keep a level head and is very prideful over her role as a mercenary from Ilia. Even being the sole survivor, she never abandoned her pride in where she comes from. Then I just have one lasting thing to leave you with. As a senior Pegasus Knight, listen closely. No matter what happens, even if you have to take a mission that you are sure you won't return from, never quit a mission that you have already accepted. We don't just fight for ourselves, we fight for the pride of the entire Ilian Pegasus Knight Brigade. This is something that you will learn quite well someday. This is to her own sister, telling her that her life isn't worth bailing on a mission. Honor means everything to her. She is very, very aware that her people are looked down on by other well-off countries. Honor and pride is what defines an Ilian, and Fiora embodies this. The better she does, the better she represents her fellow knights, people, and country, in turn providing more for them, not just for herself and her own family. Yes, but there is nothing to be done about it. No matter how many tears we shed, the snow will not melt. Better to fight for my homeland and win honor that way, as a member of the Pegasus Knights of Ilia. This may even be a byproduct of her survivor's guilt to a degree. Hanging on to that pride of her fallen comrades, to fight and hold on to her duty and never abandon it, even if her life is on the line, so that their deaths may not be in vain. When speaking to Pent, her employer on the mission to Valor in the first place, she blames the entire mission failure on herself. Pent admits that had he provided Fiora with more intel, that fateful day would have been different, but she piles it on herself, making no excuses. I understand you lost your companions in Valor. It is my fault. I should have provided better information. I had no idea there was such danger. No, my lord. It was carelessness that invited danger. My own. There is no reason for you to feel responsible. I take full responsibility for the failure of my mission. And now if you will excuse me. Interestingly, Farina calls her naively idealistic with regards to how she prioritizes the safety of her sisters over gold or her own life. But Farina is being a bit uncharitable there in my opinion. Fiora knows that honor and pride don't pay the bills as a mercenary, especially considering that oftentimes her employers view her as an expendable tool. She expresses the sentiment with Pent and Eliwood. It doesn't matter to her though, what her employers see her as. She fights for the pride and honor of her country and fallen comrades. It is all she has left of her platoon, their sacrifice for the mission. When Pent shows regret and care for her when other lordlings would not, it ignites her to continue to fight for him. She has similar sentiments over the nobility with regards to Eliwood as well, but his feelings towards her warm her heart. He tells her that she deserves happiness, and losing someone like her in battle would be a tragedy. This is the first time Fiora ever heard anything like this in her life. She would be willing to die, even if it were a suicide mission. She is incredibly selfless and brave for this, of course. It's something that not many people are willing to do. Eliwood is the first person to worry about the path she chose, and it strikes a chord with her. It is why Eliwood and Fiora works as a pairing in my opinion. Unsurprisingly, Fiora is often remembered for being the boring old dutiful knight archetype that is commonplace in Fire Emblem, and to an extent it's a fair label. But she isn't a boring plank. She'll get into arguments with her sister Farina and gets heated with Geats as well. The Geats support is important more for Geats than it is for her, as it gives us information as to what happened to him and why he doesn't feel like he has a purpose in life. But Fiora is never afraid to speak up. I especially like the line with Florina where she says if any men have been giving her a hard time, she would essentially beat them up. And to end this section on a lighter note, we must talk about her Kent support, because if you never knew about this one, it is legendary. Kent is famously known for being the boring old dutiful knight who is hardly the most charismatic guy around. Fiora is very similar in this regard. In their C support, Kent literally says that Florina told him that she was a lot like him. Things start to unravel in the B support, as Kent approaches Fiora to discuss the camp's apparent lack of proper moral grounding. He discusses his concerns over how men and women of the camp are getting too intimate with one another. They both agree that this is inappropriate conduct, but they should talk about solving these behavioral issues at a later time, alone, in private, not on the battlefield. Oh, but of course, it might be difficult to find time to discuss this on the battlefield. Perhaps later, when we can be alone. Yes, of course. I would be grateful to have the company of a morally pure individual like yourself. The A support is where sparks start to fly. They admit to feeling the same way around one another. They feel safer around each other and they fight better too. Feeling love in the air, Kent essentially confesses his feelings to her, to which she interrupts him to say that she feels the exact same way. Please, say no more. I already know what you will ask. Of course I feel the same way. Really? I am glad. But about that policy I suggested, what should we do? Well, perhaps it can wait. If you can't read between the lines here, they sideline their moral grounding behavioral policies between the interactions between the sexes so they can get it on. Absolutely unreal. What more needs to be said? But hey, each sister lacks some kind of proper moral grounding in their own way. Florina gets blitzed at festivals, Farina is chaos incarnate, and Fiora wants to get it on with Kent. I can only speak from my own experience, but it's common to see the actual character of these three get overlooked. So analyzing the three of them in this way was both refreshing, enlightening, and fun. I suppose you can consider this to be a bundle support science special episode, but I don't think I'll advertise it like that because it's not like I went into huge detail about all three of them like I otherwise would if they were actual support science topics. And like I said before, I did cover their supports with the three lords in the games in their respective support sciences as well. Anyway, I'm leaving the question to you. What did you learn about these characters today? Who is your favorite FE7 Pegasus sister? What would you like to share about the sisters that wasn't mentioned here? I know I didn't cover everything, and I know that people who really enjoy these characters probably have more insight than I could provide. Personally, I think Farina is an incredibly fun character, and I cannot help but laugh at all these silly and chaotic antics she gets up to and the wacky things she says. But all three characters are worth recognition. I'm certainly not the first one to say this, and I definitely don't want to come off like I discovered these characters for some weird degree. I mean, this game is almost 20 years old now. It's 2022. This game came out in 2003. Learning stuff about these characters is always so much fun, and it's one of the reasons I love supports so much and going back into these old games and just learning more about character writing and characterization. There's so much waiting to be learned, at least for me.